giving additional discretion to. So do you want to re-evaluate his lack of trust?
There is nobody who was supporting to go so far. And to
what you're saying is the judges shouldn't, in fact, have that ability, and we don't agree with you.
That debate under the Liberal at first, then with your government, everybody in Quebec, the judges, the lawyers, the policemen, the experts, they all say, well, we have a different system in Quebec. It works pretty well. And we don't need that kind of, I would say, philosophy imported from the United States. More arms in circulation, more people in prison. I don't think it's corresponding to what we are, what we're developing. And in Quebec, this is the place in North America where there's less violence.
Let's go to Ms. May.
Prescribing minimum sentences has been shown throughout the world as something that simply doesn't work. It doesn't deter crime. It just tends to add to the burden on other levels of government. The cost of your crime package already passed on the government of British Columbia alone is an additional $22 million because you do not want to let the judges determine those sentences. The current Young Offenders Act does allow judges to decide that a crime is sufficiently serious that a young person would face the kind of sentence if they had been an adult, but they don't get put into the same kind of facilities as hardened criminals who are adults. You need to treat young people differently. We don't let them vote yet. We don't let them drive yet. You want to put them in jail with adults. It's simply not right.
Jack Layton,
there's just a dimension that should be in this national debate, and that is the shameful percentage of First Nations and Inuit and Métis young people that are in our jails right now. And why is that? If you've been to their communities, you know, Prime Minister, what I'm talking about. 4 families jammed into a house built for 1. 18 kids sleeping in shifts in beds. I've literally seen this happen. No school to go to, even when they were promised by your government. Water they can't drink. Food that's so expensive they can't feed their kids properly. And how are they going to make their way? They find themselves in trouble. That is a national disgrace. And we need to see action on these issues.
Let's just clarify. Is that all his fault? Let's clarify.
Look, it goes back. I won't deny it. But I'm saying that all of us around this table have got to start to do better. We participated in an important apology, but an apology only means something.
I got a minute left in the segment.
If you get something done and deliver on change.
30 here, 30 here. Last minute.
Look, I could talk very quickly, and I won't try about the things we've done to address some of those specific problems you've talked about. But there is a disconnect here. The reality is the police, the victims groups, and people across this country see day in and day out terrible violent crimes that are committed and sentences that are just not sufficient, and terrible violent criminals that are back on the street in all too short order. And we all know that's happening. The police and the victims group in Quebec equally know that's what's happening, and that's why they're supporting the kind of changes we make, because we need as much compassion for victims in this country as we have for criminals.
Monsieur Dion. Yes, we need, but we don't need to have a system that failed in the United States and that you want to import in Canada that will increase the incarceration rate but not make our country safer. We need to continue the liberal approach that helps us to have the crime going down year after year after year. About Aboriginals, we had the Kelowna Accord that was supported by the Aboriginal organizations of our country, all the provinces and territories. Mr. Layton, you come with a coalition with Mr. Harper to kill the Kelowna Accord. We never had that. We'll have that when we'll be back as a government.
Simply not true.
Yes, it's what you did.
And you've supported Mr. Harper 43 times. His policies, your responsibility. Well, start to realize the responsibility of your own party and you as leader of the opposition to keep Mr. Harper in power for so long. I don't think if you can't do your job as leader of the opposition, I don't know what you're doing running for Prime Minister.
You had a coalition with him in order to kill the Kelowna Accord.
Let him respond.
And I will just, okay.
Let you respond.
Thank you very much. 14th of October, Canadians have an opportunity to have the Kelowna Accord back. And this will be done only if we have a Liberal government.
I'm an Afghan Canadian. My question is to Mr. Harper. How would you justify to other NATO countries, the people of Afghanistan, the Canadian families who have lost their loved ones, that pulling the troops out of Afghanistan in 2011, while Taliban have continuously been exhibiting reorganization, strength, and ruthlessness, is the best Canada could do to continue to take on its internationally military responsibility? Thank you.
That's a very good question. 2011 is 3 more years off. By then, Canada will have been in Afghanistan for nearly 10 years in a military capacity. We will have been in Kandahar for 6 years. It's our strong belief. We had a parliamentary resolution to authorize this involvement to a particular point in time. I think that's wise. One of the things I disagree with some other Western leaders is that our plan can be somehow to stay in Afghanistan militarily indefinitely. If we are to truly pacify that country and see its evolution, we have to train the Afghan army and police so that they are credibly able to take greater responsibility for their own security. I've discussed this with President Karzai. He agrees. That's what we should be aiming for, and we won't achieve such a target unless we actually set a deadline and work to meet it.
And no soldier that goes and serves this country, risking life, ever serves in vain, because we parliamentarians have asked you to perform that role. Now, our party was the only party to step forward from the outset and on every occasion say that there should not be an extension of the mission, because we don't believe that we're on the right path. All of the indications are that it's a less safe place. There's more drug production, there's more corruption, more civilian death, and more soldiers' deaths. Canada's voice should be a voice for peace. And we should go to the UN after we withdraw our troops and engage in a comprehensive peace process. Even President Karzai is recommending it now.
Yes, first of all, I think that when Jack Layton's saying that he's the only party who was coherent on that question, I would say that in May 2007, if he had voted with the Liberals and us, that mission would be coming to an end by next February in 4 months. That's a matter of fact. Having said that, I think that this is not a balanced mission. We need to put more money for humanitarian aid compared to the money we're investing for military purposes. And I think we have to come with more collaboration with other countries in a larger peace plan for Middle East, including Afghanistan, because even if it's not in Middle East, it's part of the problem.
The situation of Afghanistan is simply too important to deal with in a history-free zone, as Mr. Bush and Mr. Harper have done. When you look at history, you see that when the U.S.-led covert mission destabilized and finally saw the occupying USSR forces withdraw, there was a vacuum, and in that time, there was a humanitarian crisis, and hundreds of thousands of people were killed. So the Greens come at this with a different approach. What's fair and right for the people of Afghanistan? What will work? The NATO mission isn't working. The bombardment of civilians only turns people to the Taliban. The destruction of the poppy crops only turns people to the Taliban. We need a United Nations mission that is prepared to take on Taliban, but with far more nations involved, many from Islamic backgrounds, and turn those poppies into medicinal drugs for developing countries.
I want to say first I have an incredible admiration for the courage of men and women in uniform and our civilians risking their life in Afghanistan to help the people of Afghanistan to have a better living and more security. If I thought for a minute that we are there in order to be invaders, I would say we need to pull out right away, because we Canadians always put our troops abroad to help for the cause of peace, security and democracy. In Afghanistan, we'll do our best until 2011 to provide more security to the people of Afghanistan, to help them to take care of their own country in coalition with all NATO partners. And in 2011, we'll have other responsibilities to do in Darfur or in other countries. It's what we will do with the Liberal government.
Okay, thank you. How can we leave if the job isn't done? What's the answer to that?
Well, I guess the question is, I guess I would turn it around. If we never leave, will the job ever get done? And look, we can't ourselves pacify Afghanistan. We've got to eventually have Afghans be capable of running their own security. And you know, obviously, we've got a role there. This is a United Nations mission, let's be clear.
No, it isn't.
You know, people talk about George Bush. This was a mission approved by the United Nations. There are 36 countries militarily involved. There are some 60 partners altogether. We're there as part of an international mission with the support of the democratically elected Afghan government. And yes, we're doing a military mission. We're also doing important development and humanitarian work. Afghanistan is our biggest single recipient of foreign aid by far in this world. So I think it's a mission as balanced as it can be, given the conditions we're in Canada.
Let's go one.
Mr. Harper, I don't think at the bottom line you can be trusted on this. I think your views on these matters go back a long way. And they derive from the philosophy emerging from the Bush White House, a philosophy which hopefully will be replaced soon. And I don't think that this is the philosophy that represents the values of Canadians. And I must say, I don't think the Liberals can be trusted on this either, because, Mr. Dion, you committed to 2009 withdrawal, and then it became 2011. How do we know you're not going to change your mind again? So I think if we want a new direction, we need a Prime Minister who makes the commitment and does it in an election. Okay, that will withdraw our troops and start on a process to achieve peace. That's my commitment.
Since you took a shot at him, I got to let him respond to that.
Mr. Layton, I never